Three, two, one. Welcome to Jim's Take, episode 129, Why Middle Management Sucks. It's a fun one. It's a really fun one. We're gonna do some venting today. We're gonna talk about possibility today, and hopefully give you a few takeaways on how to kind of change your perspective on middle management. Because many of you listening are right in that beautiful spot of middle management, and I say this with complete sincerity. You're my kind of people. I feel you. I understand you. I know what you're dealing with. I've been there. And let's vent a little bit. Nobody else understands what you're really dealing with. Some people have gotten out and they claim to know, but whatever. Frustrations run amok. Resources talking about how to manage people, they're theoretical at best. It doesn't really translate into the real world. Most people on podcasts or speakers talk in this theory to these senior executives, and then the executives just dump it down to you to make it real, and you're kind of stuck there. And there's such a wide vertical in terms of middle management. The question is, what's the point? Really, what's the point of being in middle management? And I'm going to do my best to keep this positive. But we are going to start off with a little venting session just to show that I understand all of the reasons why middle management sucks. We're going to do a quick laundry list. Sucks because of this. It sucks because of that. This, that, and the other thing. But then we're going to put the positive spin on it. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that crappy kind of middle management negative scenario that we've all seen and thought about. When I say middle management, you just kind of cringe. It doesn't really have a positive spin out there on it. So let's give you some good takeaways and talk about reframing middle management and how to make it work for you and how to make this really meaningful for you. Many people think about getting into middle management as a step to something bigger, which is true. Sometimes you have to get through middle management to get to senior leadership if that's what you want. But at the end of the day, many careers just stagnate in middle management, and you go in and you eat your cheese sandwich and you go working and you're dealing with BS all of the time. And it's not really what you want it to be. You don't want to be there. You have to do the dance. You're really questioning why, what's my purpose? What's the point of all this? This person's frustrating. That person's frustrating. This doesn't even translate into real world. And so let's get into all that good stuff, right? So let's start with the venting. I'm going to give you a quick 7 or 8 things that I think about what sucks about middle management. You could feel me. Let's get fired up. And then let's talk about repositioning. Number 1. First thing, it's almost like a top 10 list today. Number 1, what sucks about middle management? You're in the sandwich roll. You're stuck between the theory of senior executives and the reality of frontline employees, and you have to play translator. Nobody tells you how to play translator. I learned this a lot when I was in corporate and doing executive communications. How people interpret information is so underappreciated. And I do feel like that's become a superpower of mine. If you write something or if you say something in the workplace, I can almost, with a pinpoint accuracy, tell you how different groups of people within an organization are going to interpret it. Now, if you are delivering a message, sandwich, I'm calling it sandwich generation, almost like you're Gen X. Maybe that's why I like middle management. It's why I like Gen X is you're kind of the forgotten people. You know you make everything work, but nobody appreciates you in the right kind of way, right? You're stuck between the boomers and the Gen Z, and while they all have their value, Gen Z really gets it done, and so does middle management. So when you're stuck in the middle, you have to play this translator. That sucks. Very difficult. I could give you plenty of tips on how to do that. But this will turn into a 5-hour podcast if I do that for each of these things. Number 2, while you have to play the translator, you have limited authority, right? You're managing people, but you can't really make decisions. You've got a little bit of power, but it's not real power. And so you're balancing between this too of, the dangling the carrot, you're not really getting the carrot, but maybe you get like the little branch, that little, leafy part of the carrot, which doesn't really fill you up. It doesn't really get anything. You can't make the decisions or drive the impact that you really have. When we go to work, and I'm going to ask you this at the end, is what are you getting out of work and why do you go to work? We want to have some kind of creative impact. We want to build something. We want to drive something further so that we can be proud of what we do. And when you think about yourself in middle management, pushing buttons and papers to get this person to do something and alleviate this person's concerns and, kiss that boss's ass and play the politics game and all that stuff, we lose that kind of real drive to do something and have any impact. So when you lose that authority and then also lose the resources, because you have resource constraints. That's the third thing I would say sucks about middle management is you don't have the resources you need to get your work done. You're really just playing a game that you don't want to play. You're stuck doing this thing for 50 hours a week and you're not getting your sleep and you're stressed about all this stuff because you're stuck in the middle. You're hoping someone gets something done so you can tell someone else that it actually got done, and it's kind of just this pointless, silly exercise, and that's frustrating. Career stagnation, I talked about that. That's the fourth thing I would complain about is you kind of get into middle management. Getting out of middle management is very difficult, but that's going to be the big focus of what I want to talk to you about at the end of this is how do you translate your middle management experience into something a little bit different that's meaningful to you, right? If you're thinking about going up to senior leadership, CEO, COO, some kind of MD, senior kind of president of this, president of that, there's only like 5 or 10 of those positions, unless you're in a really big organization. So how are you making sure you've got a long leeway, middle management, what are you, 30, 35, 40, 45, right? You've got, that's 20 years right there. 20 years, and then you're going to be working until 65, 70. You can do this for 40 years in middle management. My God, shoot myself in the head. That sounds awful. And so how do you start to dictate your career progression so that it's something much more meaningful than just kind of pushing papers? The communication challenges, I covered that. Work-life balance disappears. You're being hit from the top. You got to fix the problems of below, and you're stuck in between. And then the real one, the worst part about middle management, which I've talked to a few clients about, is this idea of duplicity, especially now. You know some of the secrets from the top, but you can't tell the people at the bottom. You know 50 people are being laid off, and you know even who some of them are, but you still have to smile at them and act like everything's going to be fine. That is so stress-inducing. It's such a terrible, awful way to deal with something at work that you have to sit in between. Now, it's a reality of work, right? It's a reality. Guess what? Life sucks. Work is hard. You got to do these things. Like, I'm not just trying to kind of, get on your side and say everybody should just make everything easier. Work is difficult, but the duplicity of being in middle management, telling multiple stories to multiple people, is one of the hardest communication parts of being at work. To know a secret. It's cool to know the secrets, but to know it's going to impact people that you're in charge of or people that you care about and not being able to tell them is one of the hardest parts of middle management. So yes, middle management sucks, especially with COVID. You're stuck in the middle. You got to translate all the work. You got to make sure people are doing it. You're doing it remotely. How do you make sure people are doing work? How do you make sure they're making progress? How are you developing people so that they can evolve? Because ultimately when you manage people, you got to develop them, right? The laundry list is going on here, the duplicity, the work-life balance, and none of those things I talked about is your actual work. And so we've stacked all of this on to the work that you'd like to do, the meaningful, creative, impactful work that you wish to do, but you've got all this other BS on top of it that makes it really a difficult thing to deal with. And from a work perspective, from the kind of senior leadership perspective, I've had these conversations a lot, is there's questionable value in it. There's questionable value in middle management, which a lot of people don't want to talk about, but Bayer just announced they're getting rid of middle management, almost all of it. And I've talked to other organizations, right? Some of them are only like 500 employees. Some of them are a couple thousand. But when you sit there and we talk about, what's possible, and we talk about it in the context of AI and all these other things, the bureaucracy of middle management actually prevents a lot of stuff to get done, right? Because everybody's got to put their stamp on it. Everyone's got to put their brand on it. Everybody's got to make sure that everybody's thinking about them when something goes forward and they say, we can't move this forward until I take a look at it. We got to do this. So when you got all these layers of middle management, it's amazing anything gets done. And what Bayer's looking to do is, we'll see how it goes, but there's validity to it, is get rid of middle management. You got senior leadership and workers. And then we'll see, the cream will rise to the top. And I've had these conversations with organizations saying, look, you're spending X amount on your people right now. And you've got, let's say, 500 employees or 1,000 employees, 10,000 employees, whatever it is. If we slash your employees by 80%, and let's just say you had 50 employees and you gave them each $1 million to say, drive this, do it however you want, right? Find your people, outsource it, do whatever it is, but you're responsible to get from here to there. Could your business go in a different kind of way? And a lot of executives are saying, that's kind of an interesting idea. And I don't think Bayer's going that full route to just give everybody $1 million to just kind of go and do it. But There is a very different way of, we have these assumptions on the way the middle management is supposed to work and the work they're supposed to do. And over time, it's just been twisted up in this labyrinth of just nonsense of, you have to do this before you have your coffee, and you have to do this before lunch, and you got to have a daily check-in, you got to do this. And work's not getting done. It's more about just pushing papers around and doing all this stuff and looking busy so that your middle management job isn't really doing anything. Right? And there's, what was the book now? Damn it. Bullshit Jobs. I think it was called Bullshit Jobs. And it was okay. But it was basically writing this idea that a lot of people say, my job is bullshit. It's pointless. I could go into work. I don't have to do anything. I'm just stuck in the middle and I'm pushing papers. My job is pointless. And I guess that's ultimately the point. Middle management sucks because most of the work you have to do or you've settled into doing is pointless. And you know it's pointless. It's not useful. It's all about you have to cover your ass so you're doing this, or you have to kind of make it look like something's really productive so that you could tell senior leadership that something was done, or I got to do this, or I got to do that, but it's not really doing anything impactful or meaningful. And so, how do we make this positive? How do we transition into what's good? Middle management can be good if you own your management style. Middle management can be good. There are people who get real meaning out of running a team. Right? And that's great, right? You can have an impact, and that gives you purpose, and that gives you meaning, and that gives you usefulness. You can change a person's life who's just getting started to kind of coach them in the right kind of way. You can have a positive impact on driving an organization forward. Depending on the culture of the organization and the way it's structured and everything else, there are a lot of really good things you can do in middle management if you own it in a certain type of way. You have to give meaning to what your management is going to be and what you're getting out of work. We have to look at our job as some kind of meaning, and it has to serve you in a certain type of way. Some people go to work. You're not going to change the system, but you can change how you are in the system. Some people go to work and they just love the work. Right? They just love doing it. They love creating something. They're solo contributors. They just love this type of work. It gives them meaning. It gives them purpose. It's all really good. Maybe they manage a team. Maybe they don't, but they just really love work. Great. That's wonderful, right? Jerry Seinfeld just talked in his commencement address about how you have to love your work. Love what you do and you'll never work another day in your life. It's such a stupid quote, but there is something about, you're spending 50 hours a week there at least. 40 years of your life, 50 years of your life. Find something that's going to give you some kind of meaning or happiness or general kind of understanding as to what it is. Some people hate work, but they use it to fund the things that they actually love. So I want to be a musician, but I'm not going to be a musician. I'm not going to be a famous musician, but this job gives me the money so that I can go practice my, artistic integrity or whatever it is that you want to call it. And so work has meaning in different types of ways to different types of people. Sometimes it's social interaction. Sometimes it's, I get to create something. Creating something is so important. And so when we think about why we are in middle management, we have a responsibility in the middle to position yourself in or out of it. So let's think about ourselves in terms of middle management and you just sitting there. Most of us sit in middle management and things are just thrust upon us. Things happen to us. We don't make things happen for us. We wait to be dictated for what our next type of role is. If you are stuck doing a bunch of BS work in middle management, one, I question the value you're bringing to an organization, right? It will eventually catch up. But two, let's think about why you're actually sitting in that kind of position. Where do you actually want to go? If you want to position yourself out of middle management and just become a solo contributor, which a lot of people are doing right now, that's fine, right? And you could work on a team and you could do a different type of work and you could say, look, that's going to give me more meaning than managing these other types of people. Maybe you have your eyes set on senior leadership, a C title, an MD title, whatever it is, president title, vice president, whatever, however they structure stuff. Maybe you want to be a business owner. You can use this as a learning experience to do that, right? What are you going to learn to position yourself for these other types of positions? Not just other middle management positions. There is something so much more than just being in middle management and managing a team. There is a big arc of process and vision of where you want to go. And to be fair, I didn't know what it was for me. If you asked me what I want to do in my late 20s, it wouldn't have been this. right? Now I know this is what I want to do. But back then I didn't want to know. But we still have to think about things in a bigger picture of, will I do this? If you were to pause for a minute, will I do this for the next 30 years of my life? If you asked me when I was still in corporate, I would have said, hell no. There's no way I'm doing this for the rest of my life. And that set me on a path to start asking questions. It was a couple of years. I went and took some classes. I went and did this. I started asking questions. And I positioned myself out of middle management because I didn't want to be there. I didn't like the work. And so rather than having things thrust upon us, we can have a voice in dictating our space, dictating where it is that we want to go. And so when we think about why we're in middle management, what we're doing, here are 3 takeaways. So I don't waste your time. We're already at 15 minutes. I try to keep these short. Number 1, recognize that your job is not static. It's dynamic. But you're responsible for making it dynamic. And it could change. Work is such a short-term thing, even though it's like a 50-year arc, right? Even though it's most of our lives, we have to work. It's part of our identity. It's part of who we are. All of the difficult challenges we have in middle management, all those things I vented about, will eventually go away. They're going to be replaced by other challenges, but they'll eventually go away. Any problem you have is typically a short-term problem. Everything is temporary. So with intentionality, you could speed that change up. But you have to dictate and be intentional with where it is that you want to go. You have to outline where it is that you want to go. That's 1. 2, outlining where you want to go, that takes intention. Create your intention. Where do you want to go? Why are you working? Get philosophical, right? Are you working to make money so you could do something else? Are you working because you're supposed to? Are you working because you made the mistake of getting married and having kids and you have to pay a mortgage and now you're stuck and you're like, I don't know what else to do? We got to get out of any kind of cycle. That's not me, by the way. That's not it's not my mindset, but I have heard it. Has work taken over your life so you can't do the things you love? Right? We have to put work in its place. It is a core part of our identity, but we have to kind of be intentional on how is it serving us to make sure that we're doing the right types of things. And then finally, the 3rd takeaway is learn. Learn. 3. 1, 2, 3. Middle management gets stuck dealing with things that happen to them. Learn from the ones who are doing it well and how to position yourself out. They're all around you. You know people who have positioned themselves out, who have gone out on their own, who have gotten a senior position, who have done these things. Ask them for their advice. Talk to them about what they did, what challenges they had. People are very open when they're able to make these types of changes. Ultimately, you lie in the bed you make. I do believe that. And that's not to say that there are external factors that you need to kind of deal with and it's not fair and everything else. But sometimes that bed is really messy and you have to take a couple steps to dictate where it is that you're going to go. So if you're in middle management and you hate it and it sucks, reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation. I'm happy to challenge you on some of the thoughts on why you're doing these types of things. It's easier and more helpful when you speak about it out loud. Because then when you speak about it out loud, things that you didn't even think of, those short assumptions you're making in your brain kind of come to the front and you say, oh, that's interesting. And how do I make that work? I'm late for a meeting, so I'm going to end this podcast now. But have a wonderful week. I hope everyone is doing well. I'll talk to everybody soon. Thanks.